Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. It's our pleasure to welcome you to our first industry panel discussion on how do independent forwarders compete with multinationals, brought to you by RW Solutions. RW Solutions is headquartered in Hong Kong and currently have 9 freight forwarding networks that are into industry niches. RW networks are very much focused on handling capabilities of forwarders from farmer, perishables, NVOCC, and FCL, to geographic interests like Africa, Middle East, and Latin America. By having specialized groups, members engage in more meaningful business exchanges with more qualified networking across their various brands. At present, we have over 900 members from 100 countries under the RW umbrella. All our panel speakers for today are coming from various RW networks. So today's program will last about an hour or so, but before we get started, I would like to acknowledge the presence of RW Solutions Director and co-founder, Niels Walle. Hey, Niels.
Hi, good morning, Anya. Thank you very much. Good evening. Greetings from the Canadian West Coast. My name is Niels, and on behalf of RW Solutions, I'd like to welcome you all to our very first RW panel discussion. We will be hosting RW panels every month to discuss interesting topics right from our industry by various industry leaders from around the globe. To get ourselves warmed up and to break the ice a little, we will be starting with a 5-minute open mic session where we will have the chance to quickly introduce ourselves to the audience. I'll be calling out your names. Please, of course, unmute yourselves. I very much look forward to the upcoming 45 minutes, so let's get started. All right, so I will be picking out a few people that I see here, and the very first that I see, I'd like to call on Tom Lazaro. Tom, can you please unmute yourself? Can you tell us where you're from?
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. Tom Lazaro from Midwest Transatlantic Lines, located in Cleveland, Ohio, in the United States. We're an international freight forwarder, customs broker, bonded customs freight station, specializing in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to call on Mr. Kim, Young Kim. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Mr. Kim, can you please unmute yourself and tell us where you are calling in from? Please unmute yourself, Mr. Kim.
Okay. I'm from South Korea. Our location is in Seoul, Korea. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you loud and clear. Are you a freight forwarder as well?
Yes, we are a freight forwarder company.
Okay, great.
We are a member of CLN since 2018.
Yes. Thank you very much for your support. I would like to continue to Mr. Kazim Bisar. Hi, how are you? Kazim, can you hear me? Okay, let me move on to the next one. Let me see if I can find Peter Fintian. Peter, hi, how are you? Can you hear us? Yes, you can. Can you unmute yourself?
There you go. Good morning. Hello, everyone.
There you go. How are you doing?
I'm Peter Fintian, Managing Director of KRL in the UK. I'm sat in not so sunny and rather depressed England at the moment. We're still recovering from Sunday a little bit.
For sure.
Yeah, but no, looking forward to seeing this. Very much looking forward to getting traveling again. We in the UK, we officially come out of all restrictions on Monday.
Okay.
So all our managers are starting to travel a little more and starting to look to the future later this year and next year and getting out to seeing some old friends again. So very optimistic about the future.
Great. Thank you, Peter. Nice to see you again. I'd like to call on Miss Lady Meister ACP. Can you please unmute yourself? And can I please get your name?
Yeah, hello. Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to everybody. I'm from Meister Transport Inc. from the Philippines doing international logistics services. We are here in the business since 1986.
Thank you very much. It's nice to hear from you. I would like to call on Mrs. Fayaz, Humaira Fayaz. I don't know if I pronounced your name correctly. Feel free to correct me. Please unmute yourself.
Hello. Can you please listen to me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, this is Umaira from Vision Logistics Pakistan, and we have been working in Pakistan since 2001. So
Thank
we
you.
are engaged in the same business since last 20 years.
Very
And
good.
we are one of the leading freight forwarder working in Pakistan.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I see a familiar face here. Michael Tay. Michael, how are you doing? How are things? Can you unmute yourself, please? Sorry, Michael, can't hear you. Michael, are you able to unmute yourself? I can see you speaking, but there you go.
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you. Yeah, I'm from Resources Freight. We were established in 1995. I'm part of the CLM member. We look forward to working with all of you together again when COVID is over.
Great. I thank you very much, Michael. Maybe we have time for one last before we get going with our program. James Morgan, hi, how are you? James, if you could unmute yourself, it'd be great, and tell us where you're from.
So I work for KRL with Peter Vivian. So I'm the regional manager for the North, and it's nice to meet you all.
Nice, great. Thank you very much. All
No
right.
problem.
Let's get going. I pass on the baton back to Anya. Anya, please, if you could please continue with the program and enjoy yourselves, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Niels. Yes, I would like to move on to the next segment of our program, which is the introduction of our panel speakers. First, we have Michael Räuber. Michael Räuber is the Group CEO and Chairman of the Board of Royal Cargo, which is the only Philippine-based multinational freight forwarder. He's also one of the pioneer members of Combined Logistics Networks. Stefan Haltmeier. Stefan Haltmeier is the CEO of Quick Cargo Service GmbH with headquarters in Frankfurt, Germany, with a total of 27 offices in Europe. He's a member of Life Logistics, the Global Air Cargo Forwarders Alliance, and the Freight Summit. Thomas Sim, CEO of Top Ocean Consolidation Service PTE Ltd from Singapore, Senior Vice President, FIATA Presidency, and former Chairman, ABVT FIATA. He's been a member of Combined Logistics Network since 2002 and attended the Freight Summit since the beginning in 2008. Our last panel speaker is Melvin Xavier. He's the Director of Business Development of Golden Cargo Services LLC from the United Arab Emirates. He's one of the members of Combined Logistics Networks, Emerge, the Freight Summit, and is the Director of Cold Chain Connect. So today our main topic is, how do independent forwarders compete with multinationals? Before we proceed, may I request you to switch into the side-by-side speaker screen. So overall, we have prepared 3 questions for this topic. Well, let me start with the first one. The first question is, what are the strengths of multinational forwarding companies as compared to independent forwarders? Can I please ask this first question, Michael?
You are asking me? The strengths of multinational forwarding companies as compared to independent forwarders. Okay, I have prepared a long version for that and a shorter. I think I will focus on the short version. After Mr. Trump's attempt to protect white supremacy in the United States, the Biden government is trending back towards a more social democratic free market economy. Therefore, if wars don't delay the trend, the whole global business structure will change towards such a more social market economy back, at least in the countries not fascist, populist, or governed by successive dictatorships. The restructuring will cover the logistics market as well. The question here is which kind of present company structures and styles will adapt faster and more efficiently. I can tell who is ahead in the game right now. It may be also the top elite of concentrated wealth created by multi-level mergers and acquisitions. You have seen what happened to Panalpina and what happened to Agility now, and so concentration is continuing. But do these structures deliver the best possible results for the common good? Is their service excellent and well received by the public? Or at least often delivered with the air of monopolistic arrogance and much to be improved? In the logistics world, by the way, there are not only multinationals and independents. And as introduced, we ourselves are a small multinational. The world of Vaco, for example, and of course all of you, I think, do know Vaco, has been formed as an alliance of the best in country, working exclusively with each others around the world. But that is gone. Vaco is now an alliance of multinationals with a few individuals added. While the independents outperformed the top-level concentrated market dominators for quite some time already, I think that's a fact. My personal opinion is that market dominators will succeed in controlling services which can be commoditized. Their accumulated wealth will pay for top-level IT systems, automated processes, and decisions driven by artificial intelligence. That works well for all services with low level of volatility and no need for urgent creative solutions answering the needs of quick decisions. You get what has been offered as a defined product, supposedly within defined KPIs. So these are the strengths of the multinationals. Will you ask me a different question later with respect to the independence? Or shall I continue to also talk about the advantages of the independence?
I think we will continue first with this question first and ask someone else. But thank you very much, Michael. Okay. So, Thomas, can you please comment on this question?
Thank you very much, Enja. Well, a very good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everyone. Yeah, first of all, before I begin, I think we'd like to recognize, I think we have at least about half a dozen of South African members here. I sympathize with you and I pray for you for what's had happened, over the last 48 hours. Yeah. Okay, what are the strengths of multinational forwarding companies as compared to independent forwarders? Well, when I look at this question, I look at the whole supply chain. Now, I look at from the upstream to the middleware and the downstream. Now, the perception of the market is that the multinational forwarding companies are able to provide sort of holistic business models from the upstream to the downstream and adding with customer service. So primarily, they are able to fulfill very much extent the physical flow, information flow, as well as the financial flow. Now, this is where they could be far more superior because of the asset-based kind of operation in most of the multinational, but not all, of course. Then you have, like what Michael earlier mentioned, you have the larger SME operators, but they are also well represented in many countries. We'll discuss more about the strength of the non-multinational companies later, but the idea is that if the multinational is able to perform like from the demand forecasting, starting with that, stock planning for the customer, 3PLs, 4PL, procurement management, and also from receiving all the way to materials management and distribution management, cross-border trade compliance. Now, that doesn't mean that the smaller operators are unable to do it. But the problem is that the smaller operators compared to the larger multinational is that they are much more disparate, where the multinationals have the strength of being under one umbrella, most of them. The perception of the market look at it this way. Okay, so we're going to discuss about how the smaller enterprises is able to counter that afterwards. So my first impression, first perception would be as such. Yeah, the strength of the multinational. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Thomas, for sharing your point of view. Melvin, how about you?
Yeah. First, thank you, Anya. I must say it's an interesting question. And but before we get into that, let me first say that it's an absolute honor to share this platform alongside some of the industry stalwarts. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to adding value to this panel. I'm going to try and look at the strengths of multinationals. You know, this is something that's fairly clear to most people. They have a large pool of funds to work with. Some of them are funded by banks and others by governments. They have access to superior IT systems due to a central network budget. They have a global branding presence, and that gives them a universal recognition and appeal. They very often have block space agreements with airlines and shipping lines that gives them access to powerful contracts and very often better rates. But I guess, you know, that's, for me, that's the obvious part. And I'm going to take the liberty and go into talking about the advantages of an independent forwarder versus a multinational. So that's where I would like to focus on. And that's where most of the participants that are joining us today will see value in, and to see how, as independent forwarders, we can stand out and compete. So for me, as an independent forwarder, I would say that the fact that we have a more regionalized approach, it allows us to give our clients the flexibility they need, and that we aren't bound by international laws that gives us the liberty to work in restricted market. An excellent example for me at GCS is our frozen tuna business that we move for our client in Korea to Iran. I can tell you that this business, most multinationals would not want to touch because of the deal with Iran, but they don't necessarily want to take the pain to understand that there is no restriction on the sale or trade of food with Iran. And so at GCS, we were able to jump on this and capitalize on that. So as an independent forwarder, we have a more regionalized and flexible approach. Another advantage for an independent forwarder versus a multinational would be that we have a personalized relationship that goes beyond the call of duty to serve clients. An example of this would be that we are there for our clients even during late hours. I often hear my clients complain that MNCs are unreachable when they need them the most. And clients need us the most at midnight, as most forwarders here would agree. So I jokingly tell my clients that I'm available 25 hours a day and 8 days a week. And my clients will tell you that there is some truth to it. So this also explains why some of the niche businesses like hand carry, pharma, e-commerce, and project cargo are mainly in the hands of independent forwarders. And finally, I would say the flexibility to work with different partners from the same region. For example, out of the Netherlands, I would want to work for my perishable cargo with a specialist for the air freights from someone who's based out of Amsterdam. Whereas if I was moving a break bulk shipment out of Rotterdam, I would definitely want to work with a break bulk specialist based out of Rotterdam. And that flexibility comes together with being an independent forwarder versus a multinational who is bound to work with their one office that is probably present. So, and finally, if I can just add, I would say the ability to make quick decisions because of a shorter chain of command is critical to our industry and us being independent forwarders. So yeah, that wraps up my time for this particular question, and maybe the others want to add the advantages for an independent forwarder.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Melvin. And lastly, let's hear it from Stefan.
Yes, hello everyone, and good to see you. I'm also honored to be here on the panel and being able to talk to you. I think a lot of things was already said by my pre-talkers, and I think, like Melvin, I could talk more about the advantages of mid-sized companies and independents than on the multinationals, as we are also an independent and local company here in Germany. But if I were to answer direct onto the question, what are the advantages of multinationals? I think it's obvious. Of course, it's the size, it's the nature of customers they work with. They, in general, are working for the multinational industry, while we mid-sized companies are more in the mid-sized industry. So, of course, being a multinational means that the volume of cargo they move is, of course, a lot more than mid-sized companies do. They have advantages, in particular, I think, in their size, because they have own offices throughout the world, where they can also be IT connected, where I think the pickup is done by them, the handling, even charters they've organized during the COVID times now, where they also fly the freight by themselves. And then on the receiving side, they have their own office and, of course, can customs clear and deliver with their own vehicles. So the chain of transportation is in one hand, while we mid-sized companies, we work with multiple companies, agents throughout the world. And of course, that's why networks are very, very important for us to actually put the umbrella over us mid-sized companies, even though we are all experts in our country. And I think that's where we have the advantage. The strength, obviously, of course, is because of the high volume that rate-wise they are able to go into markets and into businesses where it is difficult for smaller companies to compete with. They can actually, with their capital, buy into business, even if they need to undercut rates. They are able to do that to support or to finance business, to get the customer into their own hands. But then again, I also think that they're also very asset-driven, meaning that they, of course, need to grow. A lot of them are on stock. They need to create money for their shareholders, but it's also they are very stiff and unflexible, I think. So mid-sized companies where they can adapt to markets much faster than big companies do have assets in terms of warehousing, trucks, forklifts, whatsoever. We do outsource a lot more, where we are more flexible to adapt to markets, and maybe we're not so much therefore we can be more flexible. Of course, their growth is by acquisitions, while we mid-sized companies will grow more on the organically. Big multinational companies buy into their business. So by investing their money rather than taxing it locally, I guess they prefer to take that money and buy another companies and grow further there. But again, I mean, they are not as flexible, I think, as mid-sized companies would be. So there's not always the advantage, I think, in the multinational freight forwarding companies. It's a selling point, how you approach your customer, particularly if you sell against a multinational company. It's more the personalized service, I think, that we can offer rather than a multinational company, because, as I said, our customer base is more the mid-sized industry, and I think a mid-sized customer may not be as well treated with a multinational as it could be with an independent as we are. So that's my point of view about where do multinational companies are compared to the independent.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Stefan, for giving your insight. So let's move on to the second question, guys. So how and why can independent forwarders compete in the market? Stefan, do you mind continuing? What's your take on this question now?
Oh, well, yeah, part of it was already answered, I think, in the question number one, and the independent for compete in the market. Maybe I can just let you know how we do it in Germany. I think we have a very unique position here. As you know, we are a family-owned business, and my father started the company in 1974. In the year 2000, when Lufthansa was actually looking into selling their space only to the multinationals, while they thought that selling space to the independent smaller companies is too much manpower involved. And the big forwarders actually fill up their airplanes by 60% to Lufthansa. We, of course, were losing track to the to our national carrier. So what we did, or my father at the time in the year 2000, he started a network called IGLU. IGLU stands for International for Common Interests in Air Freight. So we went through the forwarders to find a way how we can bundle our freight to be more competitive. So what we did is we found 23 likewise freight forwarding companies similar as Quick Cargo Service. We put the freight together on the table and said, listen, all together we have as much freight as a multinational. So we set up a company, a GmbH company, and we became an IATA agent. And this company, IGLU as it's called GmbH, we go with the volume we have, the joint volume, to the airlines, and there we go and say, here we have 50 tons to Hong Kong or 100 tons to Taiwan, whatsoever, and buy on a level similar as the multinational companies do. This IGLU company is just a consortium of 23 companies, which is financed through a membership fee. So it's not a profit-based company. It's a non-profit company, and all they do is just negotiate rates with the airlines for the members in this group. So I think the combination by getting to get rates available that are on a level of a multinational company, but giving the personalized service as a mid-sized company is where we see our advantage. And I think we mid-sized companies, we have to connect. That means we have to connect worldwide through networks like we have in RW Solutions, which gives us the global coverage. But we also have to look inside in our own country how we can optimize to get the buying power to compete with these big multinational freight forwarders. So this is the system we have is a unique system because on the one side we're all competitors with 23 companies, but then again we have to overcome the situation that we are competitors because our real competitors are the multinationals. And if we want to survive in the long run, we need to organize ourselves in a way to get the rates in place that you need to be competitive to act or to sell against the multinational freight fund. So that's how we do it in Germany, and it's a very successful and unique situation, a company we have here with IGLU, which, by the way, today is ranking in the top 10 of the German IATA statistics. So that's how we do it what we do.
Okay, thank you, Stefan, so much for sharing your point of view. If we may continue, Melvin, what do you think?
So the question is, I believe, two parts: why and how. Okay, I think the why is fairly clear, and everyone here agrees that independent forwarders are a fundamental part of today's global supply chain. So I don't want to go into the details of why are independent forwarders important, but just to keep it quick, we offer a more personalized service, like I already mentioned earlier, where we tend to have more experienced staff that have higher retention rates versus an MNC. And as a client, you're more likely to build a relationship with a few individuals and who regularly attend to you and already know your needs. And that, again, comes down to more flexibility and ability to respond to regional market dynamics. So the question then is, how can we compete, and how do independent forwarders compete in the market? Now, small, medium-sized forwarders like ourselves should look to leverage our strengths. Stefan already touched upon this in his segment. So how do we leverage our strengths? One of the ways is by joining freight networks like CLN, or a specialized network like Cold Chain Connect or Life Logistics to address our specific strengths. Naturally, I'm biased with my shout out for the network, but I truly believe that forwarders need to focus and build on niches by joining a network that addresses what they stand for. As small, medium-sized forwarders, we must also look to adopt technology by investing in CRMs and integrating our portals to carriers and automating our systems to keep up with the times. But let's not forget why independent forwarders and small forwarders survive, and why we not only do we survive, but we thrive, is because of the core value that we believe in: service. And it comes down to that: trust, personal relationships, and a passion for service in our fast-moving business. Like I mentioned earlier, staff retention is essential to guarantee a stable service delivery. And this is one of the reasons we're still around and growing. Ships and planes will come and go, get loaded and unloaded, and still travel the same time with the same frequency it has been for the past 30 years. But the difference between the big and small forwarders is about the customer relationships and the retentions, and that's what we're quite good at, and that's why we work. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Melvin, for giving us your opinion. Thomas, what about you?
Yes, thank you. I think a lot have been said by the previous speakers. I totally agree, but I'd like to bring to a different approach to altogether. Now, we are now living in a very different time. You know, we are actually facing disruptions, and that's a new normal. So if we look at it in this angle, we look at new technology, we look at digitalization. Now, in this, the middleman's role, the freight forwarders, especially the independent ones, if they don't transform themselves, they will definitely be obsolete. Therefore, the digital transformation, you can see this intermediation, the removal of the middleman. So the independent forwarder, how do they compete? Well, like what in a smaller way, which Melvin has mentioned, is networking, interconnectivity is very important because this is one of the disadvantage of independent forwarders as compared to multinational. So we should plug this gap by being connected, first of all. And secondly, to be best in class in what you're doing. So you can be having certain niche where you are much more better than the multinational. The independent forwarder should do what they do best and be very professional in it. Invest in people because people is the best asset that we can have as independent freight forwarder. Invest in technology and look at changing consumer demand. The cycle is now very short. Now, people are spending now not on services, not so much on services, but on products. As you can see, very evident because the less travel, the less accommodation required, you know, and now they are focusing on buying products. So you can see online take off in a big way, e-commerce. So if we are able to focus in the right direction where the market needs, I think is looking at what the demands of the customers and also driving values to customers. Of course, having a professional and competent team is definitely required. And this is where you can beat the multinationals because the multinationals are digits, many of them. And if the independent one can be very good in what they're doing, they can actually be very responsive, be very agile, and make very quick decision. Yeah. So they got to find what the gaps are in the multinational where we can do even better. And we can be definitely competing with the multinational, not only on an even footing, but on a very specialized niche kind of services that we can offer. Yeah. New trends coming out in the market, for example, urban logistics. This is something, you know, that covers, of course, the last mile fulfillment and many other things. So these are something which people can look at. Now they can look at, of course, the food, perishables, which I think in this group, RW Solutions, they have niche services, a niche network, independent one, where they can focus more on that. Also, omni-channel retailing. Omni-channel retailing, how can the independent freight forwarders play their role in supporting this kind of omni-channel, multiple channels, yeah, and customer requirements. So these are things which they could look at and improve on their own services and be very niche in what they're doing. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Michael, what are your thoughts on this question?
Well, just one sentence with respect to the big multinationals again. As I mentioned earlier, I think they are very strong in a commoditized way of providing big volume services, and most of the time at lower margins than the independent logistics companies. No? And also, I would like to say thank you to Stefan for the excellent presentation on what his father has created, the quick cargo, the Igloo service, right? I would like to challenge CLN to look at Igloo service as a possibility to provide services to their members, like as an Igloo as a service. Now, going to the independence now, the independence of the futures are driven, in my opinion, by requirements of their customers for flexible solutions and commitments to their customers. I think it was mentioned a couple of times already. Professional know-how also of multitudes of national cultures and their ways to deliver service, fast decisions, and adapting creatively to problems and changing requirements of customers are the strong shoes of those corporate structures. Another strength must be the use of a single platform for credit control, tariffs, track and trace, global netting, and all possible back office services. Their logistics network here, for example, again, CLN is capable of providing already or possibly willing to develop in partnership with their members. I think these are big opportunities. Integrators and multinationals have since ages tried to cover all possible big niches, such as project and heavy lift handling, liquid transportation in flexibags and ISO tanks, dangerous goods, cold chain, pharma warehousing and distribution, high value transports, chartering, and so on and so on. The list is very long, and the market's big for individual solution providers. Developing these markets by offering differentiated services and investing in these markets is money earned and financed by local banks have been the basis of success for our group of companies, being also a family-owned small multinational. Would we call that a hybrid logistics company? No, I don't know how to call ourselves. But anyway, I think these are amongst the advantages of single operators: speed, flexibility, focus on customer, focus on big niches, investment in those for higher margins.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. Let's have a look now at our last question, which is, which trends should independent forwarders look out for to win in the marketplace? So Thomas, what do you think?
Right, thank you, Anja. The trends are quite clear. Actually, the writings on the wall. I spoke about this intermediation. Now, the multinationals, for example, they are all able to quote rates instantaneously, or RFP, RFQ respond immediately. Yeah. Now, for example, the independent forwarders, they have to send emails, maybe some of them on VPN and so forth, and they have to wait a few hours, if not overnight, for a response in a different time zone. Now, take a look now, fast forward to today. Now, there's a lot of aggregator. There's a lot of, in the travel industry, the disintermediation was very clear. Now, if you want to travel, you want to book a hotel or airline, you just go to any of these platforms, you get the rates right away, 24/7. There's no weekends, there's no public holiday. Now, so I'm also aware that RW Solutions are currently on the beta run or developing this solution, where they could help independent members, independent forwarders members, to be able to upload their rates on the cloud. And if you're a member, you have access to that, and that's perfect. This is something that is lacking. This is one of the trends where we must be able to prepare ourselves to be ready for very swift response. Yeah, instead of lagging behind, having to wait for rates coming in. Now, the next thing is about the power of leveraging, which I think Melvin spoke about. The power of leveraging in working together to be able to work on special services, special rates together to compete as even like multinational, able to focus on tenders, global tenders together as a group, rather than coming in as one or two touch points. We can have multiple touch points. Now, the trends, the global trends is that the customers are looking from not only port to port, not only door to door, but shelf to shelf today. So they're looking at even postponement services. They're looking at nearshoring, inshoring, instead of just outsourcing. As you can see what happened to the ocean or maritime freight rates today. Now, so they're investing in many nearshoring activities. Are the independent forwarders ready for it? Now, these are the questions where people have to answer. The trends today is very much different from the past. And of course, there are various networks, various platforms that is available, multi-carrier shipping systems like Freightos, Zenita, Logistics. Now, all these are coming up, and the challenge is for the independent forwarders to participate or not to participate. Now, if you don't participate, you're not there, you don't get chosen. Now, if you participate as independent, you don't have the competitive race. Now, so this is an irony. This is where independent forwarders could work together in a network platform through, for example, this kind of collaboration like CLN or RW Solutions kind of network, to work together and leverage on each other's strength. Then we can compete. So the trend is towards digital, the trend is towards agility, the trend is towards open platform. Yeah. So these will be the larger trends that one should look as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas, for sharing your trends, basically. Melvin, what's your point? What's your opinion on this?
Yeah, I agree with Thomas, and he's put them all quite nicely. And, actually, I prepared a little bit, and he's covered most of that already. So let me focus on maybe the short-term trends, which he did not talk about, which is also of importance, especially in 2021. Some of the trends that are shaping this year, and most of us all can relate to it, is the progression of container shortages that we're all seeing. And as a consequence of this container shortage, we're seeing a rising freight rates. And some of these levels are unprecedented in the history of shipping. For some trade lanes, up to a 400, 500% increase. And that's clearly unsustainable for some verticals like food and perishables. So what does it mean for forwarders like us? We could easily get caught out in the dynamics of the new investment that is required to fund the new freight levels. And so as small, medium-sized forwarders, we need to ensure that our margins are adequately covered, our fronts protected, and cash flows managed. We need to tweak agreement with our clients to address this new reality, and also to stay competitive against the MNCs. Like I mentioned earlier, it would be important for forwarders like us to join networks to leverage our strengths and together sign contracts, something that Michael also was talking about, with shipping lines that will give us a preferential edge over competition. And in the medium and long term, independent forwarders, of course, need to embrace technology. Historically, the ocean freight industry and the air freight industry also, I would say infamously, is rely too much on paperwork. The industry has been very slow to transition to technology where other industries have caught up. So the pandemic, however, has pushed many of us to adopt technology quickly to solve COVID-related restrictions. An example would be Maersk CMA and Hapag now using technology to streamline freight bookings, especially spot bookings. Digital spot bookings is now an emerging trend, and at destination, carriers have done away with physical delivery orders, and they're issuing electronic documents against electronic payments. So forwarders like us need to react, accept, and adopt technology by integrating our portals to carriers and automating our systems. At the end, I would say that for us to truly win in these changing times, like I mentioned earlier, again, just to reinforce it, we need to stick to our strength and our core values of relationship and trust, and at the same time, adopting to these changing times by embracing technology and leveraging our strengths by joining networks. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Melvin. Can we please continue with Michael? Which trends should independent forwarders look out for?
Well, I have to go back to my own history. I think I got my first relevant job in logistics, of which I had no idea during that time, quite frankly. By answering to the question as to what I think freight forwarding is all about, to say, I think we are in the buying and selling of space. Okay, space on a truck or in an aircraft or in a ship or in a warehouse or whatever. So now the other interpretation of freight forwarding is that freight forward is basically a logistics provider, is a travel agent for cargo. Now look what happened to the travel agents for persons right now. They are by and large gone. So of course the writing is on the wall that we have to adapt to that situation and automate our services and to get our act together, literally, meaning to say work with each other. And in this aspect, I believe actually the organizers of freight associations such as WACO or CLN and others have a great future, because I think that the members will expect more and more services. And I know that R&W Solutions are, as mentioned already, working on some of these solutions. And the more they are listening to the members as to what kind of solutions they need, and the network owners can supply, the better their own future will be in the future. Now, the other thing is just backtracking a little bit, because it was mentioned that one of the strong shoes of multinationals is that they have their own companies all over the world. But in reality, the services of these individual locations owned by one and the same entity are different. Some of them are average, maybe some of them are above average, and some of them are below average, and probably not even giving a good service. And to change that, the flexibility is not there. In an association like ours, we have the choice. We have the connections to multitude of agents, multitude of friends, and we have the flexibility, if really there is no performance, to just change it quickly. And I think that is also an advantage which we have. And we have to adopt, obviously, to these challenges. Another thing is, as mentioned already, also is last mile deliveries. Okay, actually a very low margin business. On the other side, you have also niches in this kind of business by providing last mile services for big companies. Like we are now doing some business for IKEA. IKEA just invested big style in the Philippines, and they have certain requirements for a kind of customized service for a big customer, right? So even in last mile, which we actually were not very eager to go into because of very low margins, there are exceptions to that as well. And that could be also a trend, that more and more big companies need certain degrees of distribution services of logistics companies. So for me, these are important trends.
Thank you very much, Michael. Last but not least, we would like to hear Stefan and his answer to this question.
Yes, the last one is always the most difficult one to bring up the new ideas, so what has not been said. But I do agree with every one of you, and I think what do independent look out for to win the marketplace in future? I think, first of all, what I think we need to put into our minds is that the big freight forwarders fear us just as much as we fear them. We don't need to hide behind their backs, because I think that we have much more to offer than the multinationals who are just price driven. So I think, and if you look at what I read recently, was that mid-sized companies have been growing stronger than multinational companies in the past. So that gives the sign that there is a need for mid-sized companies. I remember when my father started the company 74 years ago, they always said, you will not survive in the long run because the big multinationals will eat you and you will not survive in the market. But as you see, we are still here, and there is still a demand on service, not only mass production. And this is, I think, what we have to be, what we have to put in our heads is that we are important for the industry. I think what Michael said is also, I fully agree. I mean, look at the travel offices. Where are they today? I mean, everybody books on. I think this is a trend which we have to look at very sharply, because it's true. There are platforms, competing platforms like booking.com, similar. There will be a freight booking.com one day where you go onto a platform and you have your 500 kilos from Frankfurt to Singapore, and the customer goes onto this platform and says, just regular cargo, which is no dangerous goods or whatsoever, and he can get a rate from Schenkers, Kühne-Nagel, DHL, Quick Cargo, and midsize and other companies. So, and there to compete, I think that's when if this comes to the trend, I think that's difficult then, because rate-wise, these big boys are always in an advantage, I think. So that's my worry. If I look at 5 years ahead, I think that we are all good set, and that we will, as mid-sized companies, will definitely survive in the market. And there will always be a trend for us, for our product. I think as mid-sized companies, you also have to look into verticals. This is what we have started about 15 years ago. We looked into the aviation and time-definite business. We've also looked into life logistics, which is a pharmaceutical business, because it's more unique. It's not everybody can handle, and it's something dedicated. You have to learn the language of your customers, and you need to service them in a different way as just a general cargo agent. And even it's not a big part of our business, but I see that the biggest growth is in verticals, and that's, I think, where it's very important, and where RW Solutions again comes into the picture. While there are certain trend verticals for certain markets, like you have South America or China, and you also have verticals for perishable, cool chain, and things like this. I think that's also a trend where you have to look into where you can survive for the future. The other thing, of course, as I mentioned, Igloo is trying to unify your buying power in your local country. That's something I think that helps a lot to compete in the rates. And maybe Niels Christian, we can talk maybe to implement something similar in other markets where the members are based. It's something. It's not impossible, but it's something that helps a lot to be more competitive. And the advantage, of course, as also Michael said, is we can choose the best agent we need for our product. So we are not. We don't have to work with our own office like the multinationals have to. Whether it's good or not good, they still have to work with that office. We can choose the best of the best, and it's a good selling point to our customers. If we can say now, we have agents who understand a certain product at the receiving side, and if we feel that an agent is not working well with us, I mean, we are much more flexible to change locally an agent, and even sometimes for certain products, air freight, sea freight, imports or exports, that makes us a lot more flexible. Yeah, I think that's about what I think. A lot of it was said already, and no, thanks. I think this is from my side what I think about how we will survive in the future.
Okay. Thank you very much for your contribution to RW Solutions' first panel discussion, Michael, Melvin, Thomas, and Stefan. We really appreciate you making time for us, and we would like to thank everyone that has attended today's panel discussion. Please be advised that we will have once-a-month panel discussions to discuss interesting topics about freight forwarding industry. Our next topic will be, how can networking improve your forwarding businesses? It'll be on August 5th, 2021. The following topics for the rest of the year are, how can artificial intelligence help forwarders? On September 16, 2021. How promising is Latin America for forwarders? On October 5th, 2021. How do we make more air cargo space by air transshipments? On November 4th, 2021. And what are the opportunities for freight forwarders in Africa? On December 2nd, 2021. Also, if you do have the chance, please do visit our RW website where all our networks are showcased. you might be interested to be joining one of our networks moving forward, where we promote partnership networking amongst freight forwarders. And before we end this session, we also have left you a poll. If you could please take a time for 2 minutes to fill it up, it'll be very helpful for us to improve our panel discussions. So I hope that you had a great time. Thank you very much for attending, and have a beautiful day or evening, everyone, and goodbye.